Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about guaranteed mistakes first time Amtrak riders make.
We know there's a lot of first-time Amtrak riders out there probably watching this video, so we're going to go over mistakes that we don't want you to make, that a lot of people make, and almost guaranteed you'll make some of these mistakes if it's your first time. But we're going to save you from that today. So the first one is that first-time Amtrak riders show up to the station way too early often. This is not an airport. You do not have to go through TSA. There's not going to be a long line. There's no reason to really get there super early to the Amtrak station.
Absolutely. Honestly, they check those bags pretty quickly. You do not need to be there much more than 30 minutes before your train leaves. It's such a quick boarding process. Like you said, there's no security that you have to go through. You basically, if you have bags to check, then you can do that, get there early enough for that. But honestly, they don't leave earlier than the scheduled time. They always leave the station at the scheduled time, or if it's running behind, a little bit later. But the train doesn't leave before the scheduled time. So there's really absolutely no need for you to get there super duper early. The first time we rode Amtrak, we got there 2 hours early.
Yeah, and the station was actually closed still. They don't, sometimes, depending on the station, they won't open the station up until an hour or two before the train is going to get there. Depending on the station, the big stations, they're all going to be open. But yeah, I think the reason is because on an airplane, there's only one, maybe two entrances, but on an Amtrak train, there's tons of entrances, and it only takes about 5 minutes to load the entire train and get everybody on there. So that is a lot quicker and easier to do. Now, if you are checking bags, I would recommend get there an hour ahead of time because they do close that about 30 minutes prior to boarding. But if you're not checking bags, 30 minutes is fine. Just know that you have to find your platform. If it's a big station, you got to allow time to actually find where your train's going to be, so that could delay you. But other than that, if it's a small station, don't show up 2 to 3 hours ahead of time and you'll be fine. The next one is going to be do not book connecting trips without having an overnight stop, because the problem people get into here is they think, oh, I've got 2 hours between trips. I'm going from San Francisco to Chicago and then Chicago to New York. There's a 2-hour delay like a flight. That is not going to work because Amtrak trains are almost always late, and unlike flights, there aren't other trains they can put you on to get you to your destination.
Yeah, I think this is a huge problem because people think, well, if they have it on the website, then, I can connect with, I can connect these two and make it just one trip. Or even if you book it right through and book the connecting together, you still have the hassle if the train runs behind and the other train can't really wait for, 2, 3, 6 hours. That's how delayed some of these trains can be. So you kind of have to have that mentality, knowing that you've got to have that one day in between, because if you do not book that, you are really going to be kicking yourself, because the odds of your train being on time and giving you plenty of time to connect with your next one are pretty low.
Yeah, we have booked many things in the past where we had well, we'll give it 4 hours, and then we booked a rental car, and the train is almost always late. We missed the rental car, we're calling, we're canceling. You don't ever want to take a train to a cruise that gets on that same day. Always get in the night before. Same with a flight. You don't want to take a train to an airport or to somewhere where you're going to have to be flying. Always give yourself an extra day because it's going to be late almost every single time. The next one is mistake not to bring a travel adapter. Now, this may not sound that important, but it is. You could also say a power bank, because there is very little outlets on the train, and you're going to run out of power for your phone, your laptop, all these things, and you're going to have to power them. If you're in coach, each person gets one outlet, and if you're in a sleeper room, the room usually gets one outlet for 2 people. So you both can't even charge your phone overnight. You're going to need to do something about that.
Yeah, we love our travel adapter. We talk about it all the time. We've actually traveled with it all over the world, not just on the trains, and it comes in super handy. The great thing about the travel adapter that we use, which you can find the link to down in the description, is that this travel adapter has 4 USBs, so 2 USB-Cs and 2 USBs, plus you can also use the electrical outlet part of it. So you can charge 5 things on this at one time. There are different versions of it where it has a little bit more of the USB and outlets on it, but at least 5 things we can charge at once, which is really nice for us because we're always charging, my Kindle and iPads and our phones. So you definitely want to have that. If you're in coach, like you said, there's 2 at the seat, and maybe you sit in the seat and you're the only person there and you're by the window and you're like, oh yay, I have 2 outlets for myself. And then at the next stop, somebody gets on, and then they're going to be using that other outlet. So you'll only have the one, so you won't be having, 2. Just because you see 2 doesn't mean they're both yours if you're in coach. And then in the sleeper cars, you just have that one that you have to share.
Next mistake that first-time riders make is not using the observation car. The observation car on the train is for everyone. So if you're in coach, if you're in sleeper car, everyone is allowed to go in there, and we've seen it so many times where we get to the end of the trip and be talking to someone at a station break who's riding in coach, and they're like, oh, I wish I could go to the observation car. And we're like, you can. It's open to all passengers. They're like, oh, I didn't know that. And they didn't do it the whole ride. So it's a big mistake because it's a great place to go sit and hang out, and they often don't know they can use it if you're in coach.
Yeah, and I think for the sleeper car passengers, sometimes they don't go down there and use it even though they know that it's available to them, because they're like, oh, well, I have windows in my room. But you got to think about the fact that there's views on the other side too, and on some of the trains, the views are on the other side, on the opposite side of where your room is, and that's something that you could utilize to help you to be able to see the gorgeous views depending on what kind of train you're on. You want to be able to see those and have access to it. So always think about the fact that you do have, if you're on a train that has an observation car, the sightseer lounge, you want to use that because it's a great place, not just for great views, but I also think the other fun thing is you do get to meet a lot of really cool passengers too along the way. That's a great place to chat up with people as well.
Next one's going to be not having cash, and you might think, well, why would I need cash on a train? There's a lot of reasons, but the very first one that we get asked all the time is, what about tipping after the train ride? And you're going to need to tip in cash. They won't take credit card for tip. Maybe you could Venmo somebody if you really got to know them, but you're going to need cash for tips, and it's just something that you need to plan ahead because it's very hard to get cash once you're on the train.
Yeah, and tipping is something that we do encourage, especially if you're in the sleeper cars for your room attendant, and also for the dining car. If you're experiencing that for sleeper cars, that's included. If you're in coach, it's something you can purchase. So definitely you will want to bring money to, cash in order to tip. But then the other thing too is quite often I feel like there's a problem with the card machine, and then they only switch in the snack car to they're only taking cash. So then you're out of luck if you want to buy a snack and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm starving to death, but I can't buy anything because their machine isn't working. Now they usually get it working at some point, but for a little while it may not be working. So always have some cash with you because it is going to actually be very helpful on the train.
Next one's going to be not bringing food, and while you can get food on the train, if you're in a sleeper car, all your meals will be included. If you're in coach, you can either buy meals in the dining area, or you can go to the cafe and get meals and bring them back to your seat. You may get tired of eating the same thing. There's not a huge wide selection, and if you're on a 3-day train, you may want to have some snacks. Also, the cafe car does close in the middle of the night. You won't be able to go get food at that point. So you want to have definitely some snacks. We usually try to bring, like for the first day, the first meal we're going to eat if we're in coach, like a Subway sub with us or something, just so that it breaks up not eating the same thing. And then the next time at dinner, we'd be eating something from the cafe, but it won't feel like we had dinner and lunch from the same place.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is the cafe closes at certain times so that the attendant can take breaks. So if that unfortunately lines up with when you were trying to get something to eat, you're going to be out of luck because they usually take a break for like 45 minutes to an hour. So if you're not ready to eat before they're going on their break, but you want to eat, you're going to miss that. And then the same thing with the dining car. If you're in the sleeper cars, the meals are at certain times, and say we have overslept. We've slept through breakfast many times, especially when there's time changes and you're losing an hour every night overnight for like 3 nights. It starts to catch up with you. We sleep past breakfast, and then you have to wait until lunchtime, which is several hours away before you can have something. So it is nice to bring, protein bars and things like that. Something simple that doesn't have to be refrigerated for very long, that you can use for snack or just as a meal replacement if you need it.
Next is going to be not having your ticket or tickets out and available, either your paper ticket or on your phone. And you will need this when you get on the train. You may also need it once you're on the train if they come through and scan them. It just depends on which train you're on and how they're operating that. But it can be kind of troublesome when you're walking to the train and you've got your bags with you and you're carrying your backpack. And if your ticket is stowed away in like a big bag, you're going to have to open that up and get it out right there on the platform. It's going to cause all kinds of delays for the people behind you. And you just want to have your tickets out and available pretty much at all times on that first day when you're getting on.
Yeah, and actually what we tend to do is we do a screenshot also of the ticket on our phone, just so that we have it as a backup, because sometimes if they come through and do a second ticket check, like if there's been a really big stop where a lot of people got on, they'll just check everybody's again. It's good to have it because if you're in an area where you don't have access to cellular, which sometimes happens, or Wi-Fi, you want to be able to still be able to pull up that ticket. So make sure that if you do a screenshot of it, if you've got it on your phone, but if you've got the actual ticket, like paper ticket, make sure you store it somewhere where you can get to it easily, because they do check it more than once, many times.
All right, not checking your bags is a mistake that people make, and then you're lugging your bags around this whole trip, or kind of concerned where they are, kind of keep track of them. We much prefer just to check the bags at the first station, pick them up at the last station, and take anything you would need and put it in a little duffel bag and keep that with you. Because if you check your bag, you will not have access to that bag until you get off the train. Now you can, on some trains, bring your bags on and put them on the luggage racks, but we prefer just to check the bag because it just makes life so much easier. You shouldn't be having things that you need in your big bags. That should go in your backpack or a duffel bag.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people say, oh, well, I don't want to wait for forever to get my bag back. Again, this is not an airport. A lot of times they take the bags, you can see them taking the bags right out of the baggage car. It's attached to the train that you're getting off of. They take it, and they've got to get the bags off quickly because the train is going to keep going after your stop, unless you're at the last stop. They have to get those bags off fairly quickly. It really doesn't take that long to get your bag in many of the stations. Sometimes in the bigger stations it might take a little bit longer, but honestly, it's a pretty quick process to get your bags back. So don't feel like, oh, I don't want to have to wait so long to get my bags back. You can usually get them pretty quickly.
Next one's going to be that a lot of people really have, if there's 2 people traveling, they want to have both people sleeping on the bottom level. They don't want anyone sleeping up top. And so they'll book a bedroom thinking that both of them can sleep on the lower part of the room. And that's really just not the case unless they're basically really tiny people, child size almost. Even in a family bedroom, it's really only an adult and a child that could sleep on the lower level. There is no real Amtrak room that is designed for 2 full-size adults to sleep on the bottom. When these trains were made, I think that might have been the intention, but people were a lot smaller back when these trains were made, and it just doesn't work anymore. So that's the difficulty. One way around that is you can book 2 roomettes instead of a bedroom. That would get you space for each to have a bed on the lower level.
Yeah, definitely take a look at all of the different room options available, because it really will make a huge difference, especially if you're both wanting to sleep on the lower level, either for mobility issues or just because you don't want to go up there. Like if you're, claustrophobic like I am, I don't really want to sleep on the top for that reason. If you both have that problem, we don't have that problem, which works out really well. But if you have that problem and you're both claustrophobic like me, then you don't want to sleep up there. So definitely look at the options of what you can do on the train that you're looking to book.
All right, wandering too far from the platform at fresh air breaks, big mistake that people make, and we've seen quite a few people get left behind. If you do get left behind, there's usually not a train coming till the next day, so it's going to be a pretty big problem. There's not much warning. They'll yell all aboard, they'll sound the horn, and then they'll go. So you do not want to wander out of sight of the train, definitely not out of hearing distance. That would be crazy. But we have seen people do it, and they do get left behind.
Yeah, and there's some stations where they give you much longer breaks. You want to, if you're going to wander far away, like if you're going to try to run to a grocery store or a restaurant or whatever, like at some of the station stops that are real long, like say maybe Albuquerque, if you're on like the Southwest Chief, that's usually a pretty long one, maybe around 45 minutes or so, but it really all depends on how it's running on the schedule. So if you have a longer break, if you want to go a little bit farther away, definitely do it at the very beginning of the break, like when you first get off the train, and come back as quickly as possible, because like Rob said, the attendants are standing right by the train, and when they say all aboard, that is it. Sometimes you can't hear the horn if you're far away from the train. They will blow the train horn and the attendants will say all aboard. And when they say all aboard, they're in the train and they're expecting you to move that way. They pull those little step stools up and it's over. They're pulling away from the station, and we have seen it happen, and it's very unfortunate.
Next one's going to be not having a guest rewards account before you're riding. This is Amtrak's loyalty program. You sign up for it, it's free to do so, and you earn points for every ride that you make, and you earn free trips, which we've redeemed so many free trips over the years that not having this would just really be a detriment to you.
Yeah, so definitely sign up for that. The great thing about it is it's free. Anybody can sign up for it. You don't have to do anything special. Just go to Amtrak, sign up for a guest rewards account, and you can, rack up the miles. If you ride it a lot, you're going to get some free rides. So that's going to come in real handy. So guys, hopefully this has been helpful to you if you're planning a trip for the first time on Amtrak. This should point you in the right direction and help you to not make some of the mistakes that we made when we rode Amtrak for the first time. Guys, if you have questions, leave those down in the comments. Give us a like if you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing, and we'll see you next time.